Welcome to the Town of Abingdon, Virginia Planning Commission regular meeting. We appreciate your interest and encourage public participation in our meeting. Comments are important to our decision-making process. There'll be two opportunities for you to address the commission. The first will be when we ask for public comment, and the second will be if there is a public hearing on the agenda when the chairman declares the meeting, the hearing open for comment. Anyone who addresses members of the commission should give their full name, their address, and their complete physical address. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Ms. Rice, would you call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Quetch?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Weaver is absent. Mr. Pennington?
Present.
Mr. Sproles?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
And Mr. Schuman.
Here. All right, second order of business is approval of minutes, the regular meeting of April 25th, 2022. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? I know Scott had sent a note, but I think
They're
that...
taken care of, yes.
Okay. Any additional corrections or additions? If not, I guess we ought to call the roll because a couple of us weren't here.
Sure. Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
I'll abstain since I was not present.
Okay. Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman.
I abstained because I was not here.
Okay.
Did anyone make a motion?
No,
I'm sorry, yeah, that's...
I was gonna say, I don't think anyone made.
Yeah.
Moved too fast, huh?
I jumped the gun a little bit.
Okay.
Is there a motion to
I'll
approve?
move that we
Okay, is there a
approve the minutes.
second?
I'll say.
Okay, Mr. Sproles. All right, we've already voted, so, sorry about that. Next order of business is public comment. Has anybody signed up to comment? I don't think so, okay. Next order of business is certificate of appropriateness memo, certificate of appropriateness, Doug's Super Wash, Turnout Acquisition Corporation, 2506 South Front Street, Richland, Virginia, 24641. Owner, memo for exterior material change located at 140 Cook Street Avenue, Virginia, 24210. Tax map, parentheses, 021-8-9A in parentheses. Staff report.
All right, Diana Rice, Director of Community Development. We did contact the applicants and they did indicate they'd be here tonight, so I'm not entirely sure where they are, but Chernhart Acquisition Corporation and Jeremy Fields with Appalachian Design Services requested approval of a certificate of appropriateness for a new commercial car wash located at 140 Cook Street. When we received those drawings and went through the process, as you all well remember, the drawings indicated that the facade was going to be brick with a red accent trim. That
It'd be upstairs.
I went to
It'd be
go,
upstairs.
I went to go check again.
you can go check one more time.
And please excuse me.
No. Just double check because we don't want to not
We
have
know
them comment.
where this was changed a little bit later. You know, is there a note or anything on the door upstairs saying?
There is.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody? Okay. So the original came through us, and you all at the time voted unanimously to approve the drawing that they had provided. And now they're coming back with a new request, and the new request is twofold. It is a sample, which we have here that we can pass around. It is a request that they want to do a fiber cement board on the front of their structure. And not only do they want to do a fiber cement board, but they want to paint the entire structure, all of that fiber cement board red. So, the two pieces of information that, you know, we need to go by is the minimum design requirements in the COA for the Meadows planned unit development. Says a minimum of 50% of the first floor, front, and side exterior building elevations, excluding glass that are visible from the public right-of-way, shall be comprised from the following materials: natural clay, brick, natural stone quarried stone products. Secondary facade materials which may be used for up to 40% of the exterior building walls include hard quartz stucco, concrete materials, synthetic stucco, fiber cement siding, and/or materials as approved by the Abingdon, Virginia Planning Department or other designee. Painted smooth face concrete block, wood, architectural metal, and/or other materials differing from those primary and secondary materials may be utilized in an amount not to exceed 10%. So that might be them. Could you just run out there and grab them before they go up the elevator? And then the design corridor, entrance corridor guidelines talk about new buildings or exterior alterations to existing structures should include one or a combination of the following materials or methods of construction: wood frame or fiber cement board with brick, stone, or concrete foundation, brick construction or brick facing, finished concrete block, roof materials of standing seam metal, asphalt shingle, rubber membrane parapet for flat roof forms. And then it says site materials shall be limited to local stone, asphalt, concrete, and exposed aggregate concrete. And then facade colors preferably shall be of low reflectant white, earth tone, muted, subtle, or natural or neutral colors. Building trim may feature brighter colors as an accent material. The use of high-intensity metallic, fluorescent, day glow, or other neon colors are discouraged. So those are kind of the two pieces of, you know, code that we have to go by. Again, these are guidelines, design guidelines. That's why you all are here to make the decision tonight. And so pretty much that's all I have to say, is that they wish to put this fiber cement brick on the building, and they wish to paint it red.
Now, in the development, every other building doesn't have this type of situation. They actually have brick, is that correct?
You are correct, yes.
And in our initial review, we approved it with brick, is that correct?
That is
as well?
correct, yes.
Okay. Is there additional discussion from anybody, questions?
Well, I mean, we don't know, according to the guidelines, 50% has to be brick, natural. 40% can be other materials. Do we have any drawings or anything of that nature of the other material? I mean, that's going to show where because if memory serves correct, I thought the structure was primarily glass.
It was primarily glass.
Was or is?
It is primarily glass. This is just the front facade that will have the brick on it. So let me go back to the previous month. Are those the applicants?
Yes.
You might want to hear from them as I find the drawings.
Guys, can y'all shed? No, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
If you would identify yourself, please, name and address and so forth.
Jeremy Fields, Appalachian Design, 245 Birch Street, Bluntville, Tennessee.
Okay.
We are working with Doug Ratliff on this building. It is proposed to be brick. It was proposed to be brick. The building supplier has proposed this material. It is a faux brick, obviously. It does look like brick. You know, when it's put up, the website of the material, we've never used it. I'll just go ahead and clarify that. But the website, you go to the website and look at the pictures of the buildings. They look like brick buildings. But that's as far as I can comment on the product, being that we've never used it. So this is coming from the building supplier. That is why we are requesting to use it, because that's what they are requesting to submit from their package.
Is there a shortage of the brick or anything? Because again, that's, every other structure in there is brick. And as I read the guidelines, I don't see that this actually meets the guidelines.
Well, and going back to the point you made about glass, because of the amount of the structure that is glass, you would have to have, in order to meet the percentage, you would have to use actual brick, the way I read it.
Yes, sir, at least 50%.
How big are these panels? Roughly.
Remember if I remember correctly, they're like 28 high by maybe 6 foot long. If I can't remember exactly, but that is listed on the website. I can't remember.
Pretty safe to assume it's cost related as well.
I would
correct?
assume so, yes.
It's kind of like a hardy plank, except it's
Exactly.
brick colored.
Questions? Additional questions?
I don't, I know, I'm sure cost was the primary driver, but, and certainly don't want to be considered rude or anything of this nature, but I don't see that that meets the guidelines and is not consistent really with what's there currently.
You'd mentioned this was from the building, so this was not a client or your all's preference
Correct.
as this was simply from their push.
That's correct.
Because I've never known Doug to do something second rate.
Yeah, that's
or anything
correct.
of that nature.
Yeah.
So,
He's purchasing the building, it's a car wash, and he is purchasing the building from a company called Modern Wash. So they supply car wash buildings all throughout the United States, and this is the product they use
Okay.
when it is necessary to use brick. So their plans call for this type of material, because my assumption, they design the building, they supply the building and all the materials. My assumption is where it's a thinner brick panel, it fits their design versus, the metal, like Kingsport, we have metal panels, so, it's a thickness thing. We go to a real brick, now we've got a thickness of, several more inches.
what was I thinking J.A. Street built the one in Kingsport?
They did, and J Street is building the one here as well.
Okay.
But J Street is not supplying the materials. They receive the materials from Doug's supplier, and then they construct it, install it.
Okay.
So if we have to go to brick, then that would be, the supplier would not supply it, J Street would likely supply it and get it in, so.
And either way, if you use that or the brick, is it the intent to paint the entire?
It will be the intent to
solid
paint
brick?
it regardless of material, yes.
And just as a note, one of the times when the brick was painted is Pal's. Pal's is brick, but it's painted. The guidelines do not address that. So I think we could decide whatever we decide, but I didn't want to make that point.
Oh, I had tiles in mind when I was.
Any other questions? You have anything else you would like to impart to us?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It does say, it says facade colors shall be low reflectance, white, earth tone, muted, subtle, neutral colors. Building trim may feature brighter colors.
I'm not sure why if you had brick, why you would paint the brick red if the brick was red, but I'm not sure I understand
So-
that
Well,
request.
I don't believe this bright red is considered in the guidelines.
So that the entrance corridor guidelines talk about colors.
Right, and there's a separate agreement for the development. And that,
I don't have that, so I can't.
That's this section here on the first page of the memo, the minimum design requirements. And the only part that talks about paint, it says painted smooth faced concrete block, wood, architectural metal, and or other materials differing from those used as primary and secondary materials may be utilized in an amount not to exceed 10%.
So the entrance corridor guidelines do not apply?
They do apply. It is a COA in the entrance corridor. There's
Okay.
just these additional requirements that also apply inside the,
Yeah,
it's-
so
yeah. So it's a dual.
So I'd say entrance corridor guidelines cover the color.
I didn't have any concerns with the original drawing, with the trim and the brick, and the amount of glass. switching to a product that I don't think meets the guidelines. I think it needs to be brick. In my mind, it's just the question now of whether or not the trim, if we're talking about the trim with the bright red or, you know, painting the whole thing, that doesn't, and I understand PALS.
I only mentioned PALS as a,
No, it's a valid reference. And what I'm kind of struggling with is PALS in the blue. It's not a brighter or fluorescent or anything of that nature.
well, I think it would be appropriate if the commission just said, we're not going to revisit our initial approval. In other words, I think we could do that if that would be the pleasure of the commission, and we wouldn't really have to do anything else. You agree with that, Ms. Rice? I don't know that we have to.
Yes, they requested this change to their original COA. If you say we do not want to approve a change to your original COA, then that original COA would stand.
Okay. If that's the pleasure of the commission, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Does this include the paint as well? Painting of the brick?
Yes, I mean, it goes back, there was a COA approved initially, and what this would do is to say that COA stays in effect.
What would need to happen to get the paint, if you're going to deny the panel, and that's fine, what would have to happen to get the paint approved, painting of the brick?
I think you'd have to potentially come back again with, I think, would that be appropriate?
Well, because of the entrance corridor guidelines, the paint, and this is not something I think you would want to do for that facility because you want it eye-catching. And the trim, you know, was originally approved in bright red. But to paint the rest of the structure, the way I interpret the guidelines, it would have to be a earth tone, low reflectance white, earth tone, muted, subtle, or neutral color.
Is the PALS
Yeah, I mean,
excluded from?
That's one of the,
I don't think any of us were on here when PALS went through, or I wasn't. So I don't know too much about it.
I was. I can tell you it was not unanimous. How about if I say that?
I would just think that it kind of set the standard for the development, you know, you allowed it there, so.
well, I agree. It just, again, kind of, you know, what's bright, what's not bright, what kind of is muted, so to speak, and PALS is a light blue versus, you know, again, I like that design. I think that meets all the guidelines.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, the reason originally it was unanimously approved. Excited to see it, and the one in Kingsport. I don't know, is brick painted in Kingsport?
There is no brick,
Okay.
it's metal panels, and that's the reason that he wants to paint the brick, is so that because it's metal panels, it's a red, similar to the color you have in front of you. He wants to keep them all similar, and because this has to be brick, he's looking to paint the brick to make it look the same as Kingsport.
Plenty of red on that thing.
And I think the brick actually adds a classier look.
Well,
I wouldn't disagree, but
Here's the thing, if there is a request, and the request is fairly broad, if we go back and approve the motion as submitted, then we're back to the original COA. If we don't do that, then one of the problems I see is we're actually taking a request and acting on only part of it, and that's not what's before us, actually, I don't think.
So you could deny the amendment request. So they're basically asking to amend what got approved. So you could deny the amendment, or you could say, we're not gonna move forward with this request, and the original COA stands. I'd probably recommend, if you truly are gonna go that direction, that someone make a motion in the affirmative and and then people say nay when their time comes.
Well, now we have a
That's-
motion on the floor.
We had a motion in a second.
In a second.
That's it.
Yeah. So if you're just wanting to stick with the original COA, that's fine. I just
think
want to
that-
make sure that,
That's the motion.
Yeah,
okay,
So I think we have to
take it.
we have to vote on the motion as it's submitted and seconded, unless there's an amendment. And that's up to you, okay? So we have a motion.
okay.
Is there any additional discussion? If not, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Let me make sure that okay, we are voting to stick with the original COA.
That's the
Correct.
motion. yeah.
Okay, aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson? And Mr. Schuman?
Aye.
So that means that the original COA stands and none of the amendments were approved.
Okay. So we'll have to resubmit to get a paint approved.
If you choose to come back with another paint that you want to ask about, you can submit again, yes.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next order of business is final plat for 968 Main Street, tax map ID, parentheses, Z104C1-1-27 in parentheses. And as I understand it, the preliminary plat was approved in the last meeting. So
Correct.
staff report.
Sure. Maya Rice, Director of Community Development. Richard and Darlene Hagee, the owners and applicants, are requesting to subdivide 968 West Main Street, Abington, Virginia. Preliminary plat was approved by the Planning Commission with sidewalk waiver recommendation for Town Council on April 25th. The sidewalk waiver with a required 10-foot easement for a future sidewalk was approved by Town Council on May 2nd. And so the review of the final plat was conducted by the town engineer and deemed adequate on May 10th. And so today, your role is to recommend approval or denial to the town council for their final approval or denial.
Do you wish to address the council? If so, need your name, address, and so forth.
Andrew Neese, I'm with Prestige Homes. I think we pretty well covered about everything that first meeting, and we got the 10-foot utility easement that was required. Addison put it in place. The owners have signed it, so this just comes down to you guys looking at it and feeling like it's okay to go ahead and pass it through.
I was not present at the last meeting, but it appears that the town council has approved the sidewalk waiver and the town engineer deems the plat adequate. So is there any additional information, questions, discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the plat is submitted or approved as submitted, recommended as forwarded to town council.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Quetch, any additional discussion or question? If not, go ahead and call the roll.
All right, Ms. Quetch,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Pennington,
Aye.
Mr. Sproles,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
and Mr. Schuman.
Aye.
Thank y'all.
Next order of business is final plat for 1060 West Main Street, tax map ID, parentheses, 0104C2-A-1 in parentheses. Staff report.
So the request is from Dirk Crendel and James Tench, who were the owners. At the time, Kelly Graham was the applicant. They were requesting to subdivide 1060 West Main Street, Abington, Virginia. The preliminary plat was approved by the Planning Commission with a sidewalk waiver recommendation for approval to the Town Council on April 25th, 2022. The sidewalk waiver with a required 10-foot easement for a future sidewalk was approved by Town Council on May 2nd, 2022. The review of the final plat was conducted by the town engineer and deemed adequate on May 10th, 2022. So today, the Planning Commission's role is to recommend approval or denial to the Town Council for their final approval or denial.
Are there questions? Anybody here to address that?
I'm here, but I mean, you guys have it under control. I don't think you need me to address.
Okay. So the similar sidewalk has been approved, final plat, the town engineer deemed adequate. Is there additional questions or discussions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion. I recommend approval of the final plat for partial 104C2-A-1 into 2 portions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, let's go ahead and call the roll.
All right, Ms. Quetch,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Pennington,
Aye.
Mr. Sproles,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
and Mr. Schuman.
Aye. All right. Old business not on the agenda.
Thank you.
Oh, your umbrella.
I will leave.
May need that.
Got Nathan on there as cottage housing. Is there anything we need to do with
Yeah,
that?
I guess since he didn't show up, he submitted, you all had asked him to submit what one of these might look like in more of a design standard. And he submitted this, but he did not show up today, so I don't know that there's really a reason for us to discuss it until he pushes it forward, truly.
I think everybody had an opportunity to look at it, and it just,
I applaud any developer for taking a look at this, and, you know, I like the concept, but the concept, where I've seen items of this nature in metropolitan areas, large cities, and I've never seen one based upon, I think that's what, 4,900 square feet per unit. The smallest I've ever seen was in Naples at 6,000 square feet. This is a PUD on a 1 acre parcel. The reason we have PUDs on currently 5 acre tracts is to afford the planning commission an opportunity to go through and appropriate screening, transitions, to try to protect, you know, surrounding neighborhoods, things of this nature. What he's advocating here, again, I like the concept, but it's just, I think under existing zoning, that's Ann's parcel and Hutton's parcel right there. I think that's R3. Right now, on single family, that's 8,500 square feet for a single family unit. You know, if you wanted something, you're going from roughly 5 units per acre to 9 units per acre. I don't think, I like the concept, I just don't like the concept for Abingdon.
well, I think one of the reasons that he had discussed that was that he wanted to get at least something involved with a pocket neighborhood in the revised ordinances. So, I mean, I think this is interesting. I thought it was interesting to have it on a plot of land that you're not going to put it on. But I mean, if he can get Ian Hutton to sell him part of that piece of land, that would be pretty much amazing. But
I don't see that happening, but,
I think he said to me that the reason he put it there was because he knew that it wasn't viable, so he didn't want anyone to start thinking that he was looking at their property
okay.
and purchasing.
That's good.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, there was rationale.
Okay.
It, you still gotta address like stormwater and all, that's a huge issue. There's no room to put, even underground, there's not enough room for stormwater for that dwelling.
and again, that, I think Mr. Wilson brought up in a prior meeting, you have recourse under other provisions of our code, you know, and there are available tracts within the town of Abingdon that a PUD could be put on. Montcalm, you know, is currently for sale. That's an 11 acre tract. You know, the old racetrack, that was the Booher property. I don't know what that acreage is. I want to say it's 18 or 20 acres.
Some of that though, it has been addressed in terms of development in the comprehensive plan. So some areas that are not designated for development in the plan. So, and I think the racetrack and that 18 acres is an area that's not designated for development. I don't know about Montcalm, because you would have to subdivide that.
Yes, sir.
In,
Yes, sir. I was
Yeah.
just thinking about different tracks, because your density under a PUD could actually be greater than 9, per acre. I think it actually goes up to 14, but that, I believe, is also anticipating apartments, where you're multiple floors.
Wouldn't he, I assumed, I didn't know he was gonna be doing like a quote greenfield. I thought, he'd go in and buy up 6 or 8 houses somewhere,
Mhm.
some of the older, not historic houses, and plow them down and then build something, because that's kind of what I had in my mind. But, I don't know, he's got, I like the idea, it's just, we're bound by state stormwater regulations, so there's no place to put it here, and so he literally can't build it without that.
Again, I applaud any developer, for taking a look at that. And I like the idea. I just don't think it's for infill projects. And I don't know that that's a fit for the town. If it was low income, something of that nature, then, may bear further consideration, but these are not.
Well, I agree. I think at some point, though, we're going to have to see something concrete, because what we're talking about is basically a straw man. He set something up here, like Scott says, that, hasn't met the basics for stormwater runoff and other things. And so it's really hard for us to say very much about it, because it's,
Should we forward this to Ann?
we don't. Now, I guess one of the questions is, as we look at our redraft of the ordinances, will the ordinances allow for this type of development should it meet our standards in terms of density, stormwater runoff, that type of thing? So I would hate for us to do something with our ordinance that would prohibit this, because we don't know what could come before us if it was a concrete presentation.
Well, again, I think this is a PUD. So within the ordinance itself, right now, that would be limited to tracts that are 5 acres and greater. Flexibility may be in that we take a look at adjusting that acreage limitation. But I think it's very important as a PUD to come back here, because just like the city of Bristol is addressing right now with all the development that they've got going on, they're saying, okay, what's the school impact on all of the apartments that are being constructed? No measures have been taken for any of that. If you did this development in a metropolitan area, you'd have road impacts, water impact, sewer, schools, everything. So the flexibility may be trying to adjust the PUD acreage limitation from 5 down to, or in the discretion of the commission, may be able to approve a PUD on a tract that is less than 5 acres.
Well, I think that's, for us in the discussion of the ordinance, I think that's something that we could do. Let's say you wanted to say, okay, 2 acres or 3 acres, whatever it happened to be, I think 5 is a little bit much. And so, the question would be, do we want to change that, say, to 2, 3? Is there a number that we would put in there that would be appropriate?
Well, we may just leave it, a suggestion could be just leave it as is. However, upon the discretion of the planning commission, the acreage limitation, can be reduced, assuming all other elements are met.
I think that's appropriate.
Some qualifying language.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things that I will say is, there have been places where, people got rid of the lowest PUD possible, and then you had something like a McDonald's come in and say, well, we're a PUD to get all these things that we wouldn't normally allow under the underlying zoning. So, if there was a step process by which they could request the lower acreage first and then, come in with something, I think that's a good flexibility to add for developers.
I mean, you know, and I think we can put that in the draft. I don't
Okay.
know that we necessarily need a motion for that, so long as,
Sure, yeah, no, as long as you all are interested in some movement forward, that's fine. And if he, you know, again, it is a living document, so if we find that he does want to, you know, look at this a little differently and come back to us, you know, we're still a little ways out, so.
but I think if we do what Jeff's suggesting, then we have the opportunity to move that to whatever acreage would be appropriate at the time, which makes sense, I mean, at least to me. I don't know if is there any additional discussion here? Anybody have any different thought?
No, I mean, but it's just like, Mr. Pennington brought up a couple meetings ago. There were a lot of questions relative to the HOA that would be set up. How are these going to be capitalized? How are these, you don't want something that's going to become a burden on the town to try to enforce. You know, so yeah, I like the idea. I'd love to see something in a Williamsburg design or something of that nature. I think that would be great. It just, there are a lot of other aspects to consider.
If you think about it, it would almost be like what Litchfield is. If you think about a model, now that's on a larger acreage, but it's a similar concept.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I think if we do that and allow the flexibility, then we can visit this when there's a proposal that meets all the, like,
Yeah, I think Litchfield's an excellent example of what we would want from the grand scheme of things. It answers a lot of the questions that, you know, have been posed per se.
It's completely different from a financing standpoint than something like this would be
Right.
for folks that had obtained this.
And that's one of the things that, you know, that development is 40 years old. And you drive in today, it has stood the test of time. I mean, demand is there, quality. It's just, I think that could be an example.
Absolutely.
I don't think there's anything else we necessarily need to do, but, all right. Zoning and subdivision update.
All right, so at the moment, the Berkeley Group is supposed to be providing us a full draft here shortly. And then the upcoming meetings, they're gonna come and present a full draft on June 27th, our next meeting. And then we're going to do the public open house on July 27th to look at what they have presented, what you all have gone through, and I mean, greatly appreciated all these, you know, meetings, and there's still more to come, but we're ready to basically put out what we have to the public. So on July 27th, if there are any items on the actual agenda, we'll hopefully just move the meeting up a little bit and then have the open house maybe at 6 o'clock onwards. That way you all aren't picking a different night out of the week to come, but I think having everyone here, we'll probably get, you know, large posters printed of certain sections of the code that people might want to talk about. And then the Berkeley Group will do a small presentation, and then we'll be here to answer questions. And we'll push it out to social media and all of those things in the next 2 months to really try to get as much involvement as possible, so.
I had just one quick question.
Yeah.
And these are just samples?
Yeah, so
Of
what
what
I
is it?
put in today is the latest thing that they sent me. And as you pointed out, there's Spanish on the bottom. So, we're not going to have Spanish, not to say that we couldn't have a Spanish version if somebody needed that, but we're not having Spanish in this. And then, yes, what they sent these is the type of drawings that they were gonna put into the code, and they wanted to make sure that you all liked them. So there's, if you look at the first page, there's a plan view, which shows the like rear yard, lot lines, 5-foot minimum setback for accessory structure, main structure with all of those setbacks. And then there's this axonometric view, which is the, where you see things in more of a 3D version. And so they are proposing to do that for each of our different zoning subcategories. And so they wanted you all to say if there's anything you do like or don't like, and, sort of stop them right now if there's something that you say, I absolutely can't stand this, and then, we'll make sure that they know not to go in that direction. So, yes, I think you pointed out that maybe some of these numbers aren't correct
Well, in R1 and R2, all the square footages,
or off.
are consistent with current code. You get over to R3, and it's 6,000 square feet versus 8,500 under the code.
Okay. Yeah,
So I didn't know
which is really
if I
funny.
missed something. or-
No, I think that's a mistake on their part, so.
Well, speaking of that, doing something like this, is that add to the complexity of being able to understand and make sure, we're going to have to go back and,
Audit everything.
are we
Oh, I
trying to
see.
get too
Yeah.
fancy and it creates more?
I don't know, personally, I like the plan view. I think that's very easy to understand, like where you have the house and the area and the side yard setbacks, I think that's good. Do we need to repeat the code underneath? I don't know. I feel like we could just have the image sit in the code how we have it now. It's not really necessary to repeat it, but, those are the decisions that, you all are, I will take back to them what I'm hearing from you all, so.
I like the graphics, but they have to be absolutely consistent. I mean, I
Yes.
think when you look at the time we spend,
Yes.
are we necessarily going to catch all that? I know I probably wouldn't.
Check the checker and,
Right.
we're back to being inconsistent with what.
I agree. I would prefer to see it once in the code,
Yes.
and that way we don't,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, well, and one of the ways to maybe protect is any of the graphics, anything of that nature, attach some language someplace in the event of conflict, then,
But you almost have to hate to have to
no,
say
I mean,
that.
I agree, but
This is what it is, but don't take it for what it is.
that's it.
I mean, I think if there's any concern about it, about conflict, I'm not sure this would be good, because all we're doing is creating a conflict and also a lack of understanding potential.
Yeah, I would prefer if we just had the plan view and, setbacks and that type of thing identified. I think that would be good enough, and we could just
Yep.
insert those images in next to it. So people understand, it is a bit, the tough part is, a 30-foot front yard versus a 50-foot front yard based on the width of the road right away. I mean, that's complex for anyone to truly understand. So I do think the images are a good tool, but yeah, we don't want to make it conflicting.
Because over time, probably the least understood aspect of what we do is subdivisions. And that's, in my time, that has caused more controversy than just about anything we do.
And I can tell you right now that we have a lot of people with a lot of ideas coming through this town right now, so.
Well, there's a lot of development going on, that's for certain.
I always love individuals that come to areas because, yes, this is perfect, but I can change it.
Right.
I can make it better. It's like going down, Keywood, something of this nature. Hey, this is perfect. We can do it better.
Well, with subdivisions, the biggest thing has been when somebody wants to create a subdivision by cutting a piece of property, say in half, so they could build 2 houses on it. And then you start talking about stormwater runoff and sidewalks and all of that stuff. And that can be very interesting.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else we need to do tonight? If not,
No, I don't think so.
is there a motion we adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? I don't think we need a roll call for that. We're adjourned.